morning arrived without warning. There was no omen in the sky, no tremor in the ground. And that, more than anything, is what unsettled Simba. The Pride Lands woke gently, almost too gently. Birds sang their familiar songs, the herds moved across the plains, and the wind carried scents of grass and earth. But beneath it all, there was a stillness that felt deliberate, like a held breath waiting to be released. Simba decided on an early walk along the borders. Steers wasn't a patrol, not in the traditional sense. It was about presence, about feeling the pulse of his kingdom. Kiara joined him, and soon after Kian and Rafiki. There were no guards, no rigid formation. It was just the soft sound of their footsteps on the earth, a family walking the land they loved. Kaon broke the quiet first. "The echo hasn't moved," he said, his voice low. "I can feel it. But it's distant. It's just there." Rafiki, his ancient eyes scanning the horizon, nodded slowly. He leaned on his staff. "When danger grows silent," he murmured, "it is learning where to step." His words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken wisdom. They walked on, the weight of that silence settling around them. They soon reached a stretch of land where the savanna grasses met weathered stone. It was a place that had seen conflict many seasons ago, a scar on the land that had since healed. But now, it stood unnervingly untouched. Kiara suddenly stopped. "Do you hear that?" she whispered. Simba paused, straining his ears. He heard nothing. Absolutely nothing. No buzzing insects, no chirping birds. It was as if even the wind had decided to avoid this one small patch of the Pride Lands. The silence was so profound it was almost a sound in itself. They. And then, a faint ripple passed through the ground beneath their paws. It wasn't strong enough to be a tremor, not enough to shake them, but just enough to be noticed. A subtle, unsettling vibration. From the deep shadows between the rocks, a figure emerged. A young lion, not much older than a cub. He wasn't scarred or battle-hardened. He didn't carry the air of a warrior. He simply looked uncertain. He lowered his head slightly, a gesture of respect, or perhaps apprehension. "I was sent," he said, his voice quiet but clear. "But not to fight." Simba studied the young lion, his gaze steady and assessing. "Sent by whom?" he asked, his tone even but firm. The lion hesitated, his eyes darting for a moment before meeting Simba's again. "By those who left," he admitted, "Kivyuli's former followers. The outcasts who had once challenged the circle of life. They don't want war," the young messenger continued, his voice gaining a bit of strength. "They want certainty, they say. They say this world feels unfinished." Rafiki's staff tapped once against a stone, the sharp sound echoing in the unnatural quiet. He said, a knowing light in his eyes. "The echo does not need armies. It only needs unanswered questions." The implication was clear. This new threat wasn't one of claws and teeth. It was a predator of the mind, feeding on doubt, on fear, on the feeling that something was fundamentally wrong with the world. Simba took a step forward, his presence calm and regal. He looked directly at the young lion, not as a king addressing a subject, but as one lion to another. "Tell them something for me." The messenger looked up, his expression a mixture of surprise and curiosity. "Tell them, the circle was never finished," Simba said, his voice resonating with a newfound understanding. "It was always becoming." The young lion nodded slowly, as if a great weight he didn't even know he was carrying had just shifted inside him. The words seemed to settle something deep within his spirit. Without another word, he turned and disappeared back into the tall grass, vanishing as quietly as he had appeared. The silence returned, but it was different now. It was less oppressive, less menacing. It was still a cautious quiet, but the edge of dread had softened. The held breath of the Pride Lands seemed to ease, just a little. That night, Simba gathered the leaders of the prides. But this was not a council of war. He didn't stand before them to issue commands or rally troops. He came to listen. And the stories emerged. One by one, they spoke. Of young lions afraid to make the wrong choice, paralyzed by the weight of their ancestors' legacies. Of elders unsure when to let go, clinging to traditions that no longer serve the present. Of cubs being raised on legends so grand, so heavy, they felt impossible to live up to. Each story, each fear, each doubt was a piece of the puzzle. The echo fed on this weight, It thrived in the space between what was and what could be, twisting uncertainty into fear. When everyone had spoken, Simba finally stood. His voice was not a king's decree, but a quiet truth shared in the darkness. We don't defeat this by proving who is strongest, he said, his gaze sweeping across the gathered faces. We defeat it by allowing ourselves to be incomplete. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some of confusion, but many more of relief. It was a radical idea. To embrace imperfection. To accept that they didn't have all the answers. In that moment, Keon felt a change within him. The roar of the elders, the immense power he wielded, responded. It didn't flare with aggression, nor did it dim with fear. It settled. It found a new kind of equilibrium, grounded not in strength, but in acceptance. Far below the surface of the Pride Lands, in the deep places of the earth, the stone shifted. The deep echo, the source of this creeping dread, stirred. It was unsettled, not by force, not by a challenge of power, but by something entirely unfamiliar to it. Acceptance. This wasn't surrender. It was the acceptance of uncertainty as a part of life, not as a flaw to be eliminated. For the first time since it had awakened, the echo found nothing sharp to grasp. 2. The doubts it fed on were no longer seen as weaknesses, but as part of the journey. It recoiled slightly, confused, but it did not retreat. It adapted. Again. The echo was ancient, and it was patient. It had learned that brute force was not the only way. The circle of life had learned patience, too. And now, it would be tested by choice. The question was no longer whether the Pride Lands could stand together against a common enemy. The question was whether they would keep choosing to, day after day, in the face of their own imperfections and doubts. The night deepened. The stars burned with a steady, unwavering light above the Pride Lands. And somewhere beneath them all, in the quiet darkness, something ancient waited. It waited for the moment doubt would return. Because it always did. And when it did, the circle of life would either bend under the pressure, or it would finally break. 3. Thank you for watching. You enjoyed this story. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss what happens next in the Pride Lands. Dawn came quieter than it should have. The stars faded slowly, as if reluctant to leave, and the sky lightened without color or fire. Simba woke before the sun, standing at the edge of Pride Rock, listening to the land breathe. It was calm, but not at rest. Below, the herds moved carefully. They weren't afraid. They weren't aware. Kiara joined him, sitting so close that their shoulders almost touched. It feels like the world is waiting, she said. Simba nodded. It is. Far from Pride Rock, beyond where the plains folded into stone and shadow, the ground shifted again. It wasn't violent. It was precise. A line formed in the earth, as thin as a claw mark, stretching unseen beneath roots, rivers, and ancient paths. The echo was no longer just pushing. It was mapping Q and felt it mid-step while training with the young lions. His paw faltered, his breath catching in his throat. The roar stirred inside him not sharply, but insistently, like a warning tapped from the inside. He knew something was wrong, something fundamental. Later, speaking with Rafiki, he tried to put words to the feeling. "It's not attacking," he said, struggling to explain. "It's learning us." Rafiki's eyes, usually full of mischief and wisdom, darkened with a new kind of concern. Then it seeks not fear," the old mandrill murmured, "but pattern." Across the lands, small changes began to appear. A hunting party, usually a seamless unit, argued over direction and split up for no good reason. An elder, known for her patience, corrected a cub too harshly, then walked away without mending the hurt. A familiar river path collapsed, not enough to cause a flood, just enough to divide the herds that relied on it. Nothing catastrophic. Everything was subtle. The circle of life was being tested at its seams. But Simba called no alarm. He watched, he listened, and when Cavalli approached, hesitant, unsure of his place among them, Simba did not send him away. Instead, he asked him to walk. 2. They moved together along the edge of the broken valley, where new grass was slowly returning. Kivali's internal fire, which once flickered so wildly, now burned low and controlled. "I feel it," Kivali admitted, his voice barely a whisper. "The pull. It doesn't tell me what to do anymore. It asks." Simba's gaze remained fixed on the horizon. "What does it ask?" he said. Kivali let out a long breath. "There." The words heavy with confusion. Who decides what's right when everyone believes they already are? Simba stopped walking, turning to face the younger lion. "That's the oldest question there is," he said, "and the most dangerous when answered alone." That night, the moon rose full and pale, casting a sterile light over the Pride Lands. The deep echo shifted again. This time, it did not reach upward, toward the sky. It reached outward, into the minds of the sleeping. Dreams changed. Lions dreamed of paths they didn't take, of words they didn't say. They dreamed of choices that might have spared pain, of grievances left unsettled. Some woke restless, pacing in the dark. Some woke angry, convinced of injustices they'd never noticed before. And some woke with a chilling new clarity, convinced that they alone saw the truth. And that was enough. By morning, the fractures had begun to show. A small pride had moved east without a word. Another, citing an old, forgotten boundary, refused to share water rights with their neighbors. A young lion challenged an elder not for leadership, but for certainty. He didn't want power. He wanted to be told he was right. Simba felt it then not as a king, but as a son of the circle. He finally understood. The echo didn't want to rule. It wanted to replace something far more important: trust. So Simba gathered the prides again. Not with a roar, not with force, but in open ground. He stood among them, not above them. "The echo is not our enemy," he said, his voice slow and deliberate, carrying across the silent plain. "It is our consequence." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Consequence? What did he mean? Simba let the confusion settle before he continued. "It exists because we fear being wrong," he said, his gaze sweeping over every lion present. "Because we fear letting go of control. Because we have started to believe that unity means everyone must agree." Kaon stepped forward, his own voice steady, resonating with newfound understanding. "The roar doesn't work when I command it alone," he announced. "It only responds when I listen to the land, to the circle." Kiara followed, standing beside her brother. "Love doesn't unite kingdoms by erasing our differences, she said, her words clear and strong. "It unites us by protecting them." Then, to the surprise of many, even Kivali spoke. His voice was quiet but firm. "Fire doesn't destroy when it's given purpose," he said. "Only when it's left to decide for itself." These words didn't silence the echo. They couldn't. But they confused it. Beneath the ground, the ancient presence shifted, encountering a kind of resistance it could not easily twist. It wasn't strength. It wasn't defiance. It was understanding. A collective acceptance of imperfection. Still, the echo was ancient. It was patient. It withdrew just enough. Simba felt the land settle slightly, like a tide pulling back before the next great wave. He turned to Rafiki, who had been watching from the edge of the gathering. "This isn't the end," Simba said quietly. Rafiki smiled, but it was a sad, knowing smile. "No, my king," he replied. "This is the lesson before the lesson." The sun climbed higher. Life in the Pride Lands continued. For now, the circle of life knew something it hadn't before. The greatest threat would not come as fire or shadow. It wouldn't be an invading army or a devastating drought. It would come as certainty, the absolute, unshakable belief that one is right and everyone else is wrong. The days that followed felt ordinary. That was what made them dangerous. The sun rose on time. The herds grazed. Cubs played near the shade of Pride Rock. From a distance, the Pride Lands looked healed, stronger than they had been in seasons. Yet beneath the calm, the circle felt stretched. Simba sensed it during councils where voices spoke a little louder than necessary. Too, in patrols that returned without conflict, yet carried frustration in their silence. In moments where agreement came too quickly, or not at all, the echo had learned restraint. It no longer pushed at everyone. It selected. Kaon noticed it first among the young lions. During training, one cub lingered apart, eyes sharp, listening too closely. Another questioned every instruction, not out of curiosity, but defiance. The roar within Kaon responded faintly, each time not with warning, but discomfort. "This is different," Kaon admitted to Kaon as they watched the plains darken. Before, power wanted control. This wants influence. Kaon nodded. It doesn't want to lead. It wants to convince, far from Pride Rock. Along an old migration route, a lone lion stood beneath a broken baobab. He was neither scarred nor fierce-looking. His mane was unremarkable. His voice calm. That was why others listened. "They call it balance," he said to the small group gathered near him. "But balance always asks someone to carry more weight." A murmur of agreement spread. "Share. What if the circle is just a story king's tale to keep everyone else still?" He continued. The ground beneath them pulsed barely. Enough. By the time Simba heard of the gathering, it had already ended. The lions had dispersed peacefully. No challenge. No rebellion. Just questions left behind. Rafiki's staff struck stone when Simba told him. He said softly. The echo has found its tongue. Simba closed his eyes. Then it's already inside the circle. Yes, Rafiki replied. Removing it would tear the circle apart. That night, Simba dreamed. He stood on Pride Rock, but the land below was divided into perfect sections, each fertile, each thriving, each isolated. The herds did not cross. The lions did not speak. Everything worked. Nothing lived. He woke before dawn, breath heavy. The choice was becoming clear. He stepped down from Pride Rock. Not to command, to listen. He walked the Pride lands without escort, without announcement. He sat with elders who felt forgotten, with hunters who felt unseen, with cubs who felt unheard. He did not correct. He did not explain. And wherever he listened, the echo weakened. Not because it was fought, but because it was exposed. Kivali felt it too. His fire stirred when he passed near certain places, circles, where lions spoke in absolutes, where doubt had been replaced by belief sharpened into certainty. It avoids questions, Kivali realized. It feeds on answers that leave no room. The echo shifted again. This time, it did not move the land. It moved loyalty. A small pride announced it would govern itself until clarity returned. Another refused council decisions, citing personal truth. No war followed. No fire. Just distance. The circle began to fray not violently, but politely. Simba gathered Kiara Kion, Rafiki Kavali, and the Watchers of Stone beneath the stars. We cannot force unity, Simba said, and we cannot allow it to dissolve. Kayan looked down. The roar can't fix this. No, Rafiki agreed. Because this wound is not. Loud silence settled. Then Kiara spoke. Then stop trying to protect the circle. All eyes turned to her. Let it choose, she continued. Not by fear, not by power, by trust. Let those who believe walk their path. And let the circle remain open for return. Simba felt the truth of it, settle slowly, heavily. Thrived. The echo thrived on resistance. It starved on patience. At dawn, Simba made his final decree not as king, but as guardian. The circle is not a boundary, he announced. It is an invitation. No lion was ordered to stay. No lion was chased for leaving. And something ancient beneath the land hesitated. There. For the first time since it awakened, the deep echo encountered a force it could not predict. Freedom without fracture. Unity without control. The ground stilled. The waiting continued. Because now, the final reckoning would not be decided by battle. It would be decided by choice. And the echo older than fear, older than kings would soon have to choose as well.